the small group discussions and from previous speakers, there are some procedural issues. Municipal courts hold individuals unable to pay until they are able to do so. We've heard that many stories. Our work not only looked at statistics, but we interviewed hundreds of people who were either in the system, worked in the system, or had experience with it. Most courts do not take into account an individual's ability to pay, as you heard. One of the things that is an issue with that is that when you have 600 people in one court session, it's very difficult to even get through that in one night court session, let alone take into account each person as an individual and their circumstances. Courts are permitted to create payment plans, reduce fines, or treat fines and fees as a civil matter, but most do not. We found that the most common answer for that was it was just not feasible to pursue it in another way. The easiest way to collect was to either lock people up or issue a warrant, other things like that. Individuals not provided legal counsel are notified of rights. And that's something that a lot of people have touched upon, and something we heard time and time again was that for a lot of people, their only interaction with their local government was in the municipal court system. And when they entered it, they saw a judge that was paid by the municipality and a prosecutor that was paid by the municipality, and no one that was there to even inform them of their basic rights. And that was one of the issues that really came about quite often. So when we discussed, with experts, with individuals who had gone through the system, attorneys, what are some of the best practices and some potential reforms? We wanted to find out some basic ways we could address these things. We think that it begins with granting greater oversight. A system that requires, paperwork to be turned in, but it isn't monitored. There's no enforcement of it. Simply doesn't do the trick. Implementing a 10% cap on the amount of general revenue, the Senator Schmidt's bill that he has issued would do. Another was pooling municipal court fines and fees. In the previous presentation, there was a discussion about that system. With the courts, though, it really takes away a direct incentive to fine your own citizens or those passing through your jurisdiction. And unlike with sales tax revenue, a fine, if I issue it as a municipality, I get to keep all of that. So what you have is a very powerful tool for accumulating revenue in your municipality. Ensuring the court's ability to remain open to the public. As we also heard similar stories of people that weren't allowed to bring children in. And when we went to discuss why that was happening, again, it was, we have too big of a docket. So they just simply couldn't accommodate the amount of people that they were bringing in to find. Just a few more bullet points. Providing a uniform list of rights and procedural options. A lot of the people that we just met with and spoke to really felt the deck was stacked against them. They didn't know their rights. They weren't plainly issued to them. If you go to court and you request this, this has to happen. Whether that's placed at the entrance of the courts, on municipal websites. We thought that it could be on the back of every citation so that immediately it doesn't create an us against you mentality. Here's your rights, we're making you aware of them. Requiring courts to utilize alternative means, that was previously discussed. Providing for ability to pay hearings. Requiring that municipal judges be selected by a panel in the judicial circuit in which they sit. Currently, they can be hired, in some places, the prosecutors, judges, by the municipality. And when 30% of the operating revenue for that municipality comes from the courts, I think that, I would know what was expected of me. That's not to say that all judges do that. All judges are put in that circumstance, but it's one of the things that we can't have a justice system that we just have to say to people, trust us, it's on the level, because it's just not happening. And finally, requiring a municipal court to have a paid public defender. On average, municipal courts, we found that every municipal court on average brings in $500,000 more than it spends to operate. That's certainly a significant chunk of money that could be utilized to have public defenders there. Those are all of our suggestions, so thank you.
David, thank you. Could I ask all of our panel to, if you could all go, David, stay up there, if all could kind of array yourself behind the podium, because I think we're going to have questions, and one or more of you may want to respond to them, because this has raised a number of issues, and the members of the community had lots of questions that they raised in the breakout sessions, and so I wrote a number of them down. We're going to try to represent them. So let's start with questions from commissioners, and we'll ask you to help us here, please. Microphones behind you, down here.
David, can I just clarify one thing? Did you say, and TR, this a little bit, putting these two things together, taxes paid by citizens in the county are shared, but fines are kept, which is the 45 million, are kept in the municipalities, which creates an incentive to fine because you're in control of that versus the shared model. Did I get that right?
Correct. And yeah, Mr. Clark touched upon this earlier. The sales tax pool involves sales tax sharing across the municipalities based on categories, and probably takes much more time than I think a seminar class could be dedicated to. But with the court system, what you have is a direct incentive. So if I fine someone $1, I keep $1.
Okay, so with the 90 municipalities, just do you have a spreadsheet of these municipalities? Who's up 30%? Who's this? I mean, all these questions that I have in a simple spreadsheet.
Correct, and we do have that. We have reports for all the commissioners located on the table behind you with a table of all that information. What we did was that information is provided to the state, but we put it in a table where you can see the revenue that's brought in, their general budget for the year, and things like that. But all of that is in there.
And we'll post that on the website.
Thank you. I have a question about civil proceedings, that the municipal courts would be civil proceedings. I'm not sure, is it May? Would you kind of elaborate on the fact that municipal court proceedings are in fact civil proceedings and not criminal proceedings, and the foundation for that, and what that means again?
Right. Well, numerous cases out of the Court of Appeals and the Missouri Supreme Court have specifically referred to our courts in the municipalities as civil. Kansas v. Martin, Frisch versus City of Columbia, Kansas City versus Myers. These go back over time, and they repeatedly say that these are civil proceedings. I do wonder if someone went in and sought an injunction in our federal court system for one of these kiddo protesters who had bail set on them, if they might not prevail in a challenge, and that being an improper deprivation of liberty in a civil court system.
Thank you. And then David, I've got a couple questions for you. You said the next comparable county, I assume that was Jackson County that you looked at compared to?
It was not. It was a county just south of Jackson. I think Jackson has
Cass County, probably?
Yeah, 18 municipal courts in Jackson.
So Jackson only has 18 and Cass has more than that. And then you may not be able to answer this question, but do you have any idea how Senator Smith came up with 10%?
I think that there's been a lot of discussions that, we've had people come, and the 10% number is a number that over half of the municipalities in the St. Louis region already operate under. So I think that, if in a lot of the discussions that we've been a part of, it's come up as a cap that would allow for municipalities to operate in a healthy way, just based on the fact that an overwhelming majority of municipalities are already below it.
Okay, so that's included in the information you have
yes,
for us?
That is in the report as well.
Okay, and then I guess the state auditor is doing an audit of a lot of these courts. And from my understanding is part of the problem is definitions on what is general revenue, and I think that kind of has to be clarified also, because you can kind of skew the numbers a little bit either way.
We largely got the general revenue numbers from how a municipality defined general revenue in their budgets, and also from the state documents. So we try to stay pretty consistent with it, but there are a few municipalities where we got it from one source or the other.
Thank you.
Could I follow up on that real quick? Just want to say, as far as the 10% number, I think Ferguson, in our paper, we said that they made 20% of their revenue from the courts, which they've corrected and said it's 11%. Regardless of what the percentage is, it's $2.7 million, right? It's too much. And people feel that it's too much. So at $2.7 million, it's still, if I operated a business and my costs were $400,000 or $500,000 to run the court and $2.2 million in profit, that's a healthy business. And I think